That would really help us out.
Yeah, I've got a backup going.
Okay. How's the levels on that? Good evening, everyone. I think we're live. Random will tell me if he's got the YouTube channel
Looks
open.
like it.
All
Yeah.
right. Let me adjust that a little bit. And that a little bit. And I should be just fine and dandy. All right. Welcome, everyone, to live news for January 2022. And you've got three of us with you. We may get a Sparkle Puss at some point. We're not sure. He has a busy work day, but he's hoping to join us. So the three of us will crack on in the meantime with the usual start of what we've been up to this last month. And while I'm talking, I might as well go first. So, movie-wise, obviously, we have now all watched 8-Bit Christmas. I did it just after Christmas, actually, but I watched that. It was good. I don't think it was great, but I think it was good. I think it's one that will be on, an annual playlist, certainly, every Christmas. I think it was good. I still prefer Elf, but there you go. That's just me. But yeah, it was good. I watched The Rescue, which Scott recommended a couple of months ago. Just an amazing film. I think it's one of the best documentaries I've ever watched, if not one of the best films I've ever watched. I actually cried a little bit. I got all emotional. It's just great. If you've not seen The Rescue, no spoilers, but it's definitely worth watching.
Oh man, look, that movie, I'm telling you. That it wasn't. I mean, it's weird to. I mean, it's kind of a documentary, but kind of not. I mean, it's you can tell like the obviously for the news crews, they were all over that place. They had cameras running on every inch of activity outside the cave entrance, and all was being filmed. But you can tell when those guys were in the cave doing their jobs. The idea of keeping that GoPro running was probably the last thing on the list,
Yeah.
And that they, actually managed to get the footage they did. And some of it, like, the bits like where they were doing the exit from the cave. And they get down to like, the last, two kids or so. And they've already had like, that shit was touch and go.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that nothing said they should have been able to make it, but when they get down to like those last two kids and they're swimming out down through that cave and everything, that they actually had video of some of those moments. It's one thing to describe it, it's another thing to like see them, like like when the one guy says we had to stop at this one thing, and it wasn't twitching, and looks like he might be done for. That sounds serious. But, when you see what they were dealing with, you're like, good luck, boys.
Yeah. It just unbelievable. And what people will do when pushed, and what people do just for shits and giggles, What a hobby that is. Jesus.
Yeah, that was some random Dave shit, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, look, I tell you, man, for all our UK listeners, especially, I mean, there was all kinds of folks, The only people who shouldn't watch it is the locals, because wow, what a bunch of dicks.
Yeah.
If you want to look like a piece of shit on national fucking TV, act like they did.
Yeah. Thanks for all the help you give him, but if anyone dies, we're going to put you in prison for manslaughter.
Yeah, no, that was so. Yeah, I mean, no shit. Like it was very much like sort of the spirit of England, like these two dudes that just like on their weekend fucking hobby, dress up like a bunch of fucking tadpoles and go wiggling through fucking holes in the ground. I mean, like, I don't know why the first person I thought of was, well, like some people always say, well, that's American shit. I think that's some British shit. And then the first person I thought was, that sounds like something random would do on the weekend.
Yeah.
Can't you just see, like, if I fucking somehow ended up in a fucking cave and fucking saw a random sitting in there fucking smoking a cigarette, fucking dressed up like that, wouldn't even fucking surprise me. I mean, of course you're here. But what a fucking tribute, to how how things were looked at and how things were done. And then, of course, like, so you had the, what was it, the New Zealand, the Australian, the British SEALs, I mean, the special boat,
Yeah.
and then the American Navy SEALs show up.
Yeah.
And these guys are used to, all of them are used to doing everything in the world. And they've got the world's best gear. That doesn't mean they have the right gear for crawling between rocks 200 foot under the water.
Yeah.
And, they had to kind of learn that. I mean, and then they get the guys that, do it as a hobby and that have the right gear, and they get it all figured out. But the one bit, though, where they have the fucking local guys, and they're like, yeah, so if anything goes wrong, we're going to have to very calmly walk out of the cave, run down the hill, get into the Land Rovers, and get the fuck across the border before the pitchforks is in. Not a fucking iota of thank you.
Yeah.
Especially when that the little fucking troll with all the fucking medals on his chest, undoubtedly for heroic acts.
Yeah.
And this is a fucking Banana Republic fucking shit show,
Thank you for your lack of service.
Yeah, they get this one little fucking troll, and he's asking, like, if they're just, the anesthetist or anesthesiologist or whatever, who's also a diver, who is, like, risking his life to go in and get these kids out. And he's having to do something that's not been done ever. And they start, giving him a hard time. Like, they start, like, well, is this the, proper official method? And first of all, these people utterly incapable of the task. This is so far beyond their preparation, ability, and wherewithal. The least they could do in a amicable manner is to shut the fuck up. And instead, this little fucking troll with all the medals pinned to his chest, I am the great leader. He gets out there. And he's like, is this the approved method? Is this the acceptable dosages for this situation? And the fucking anesthesia guy's like, I bet I could only imagine, like, the uncensored audio. No, you cunt. There is no method. It's never been done before, okay? Oh, my God. But no, man, those, what a great documentary. I mean, like, I've always said, like, From the Earth to the Moon and Band of Brothers and all those are, like, the best uses of television ever. Well, I want to add this to the list. I got to say, man, the Rescue is one of the more noble things done with television that really showed what, those people are capable of. The rescuers and the hobbyists and all that. And it really tells you stay away from third world countries. They're that way for a reason.
Yeah. So on a slightly lighter note, I watched Red Notice, which is, I think it was straight to Netflix. It stars The Rock, Ryan Reynolds, Gal Gadot, so you know the kind of audience it's aimed at. But it's a pretty decent film. It's pretty funny, and for considering, people say, "Oh, Americans don't get sarcasm," just watch that film. Ryan Reynolds, that's his best performance. I liked Free Guy that he did end of last year. But Red Notice, I think it's his best film, and it's definitely worth a watch. It's a family-friendly film, that kind of audience. You're not going to be scared. You're not going to be enthralled on the edge of your seat. But a great movie.
The greatest rock film, that's like probably describing, who's the chick from fucking... the nerd movie, not Third Rock, fucking... What's the guys
Bang?
that hang out? Huh?
Big Bang Theory?
That's the one. Mayhem or whatever her name is.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
Yeah. That's like saying her sexiest porn. I mean...
Yeah. But no, it is a good film. Definitely watch that. I went to the cinema a couple of days ago and watched the new Scream movie. Obviously, these things, it's on number 5 now. They get steadily worse with each one. It's worth a watch. Maybe not a theatre journey, but watch it at home.
They get steadily worse with each one. Which one was this, Mike?
This was number 5.
So,
but
I like, even though they have sort of steadily got worse, I think I still enjoy the series. But the trailer for that was on just before when I watched The Matrix. and it just seemed so bad with it. Like, the whole sort of, usually it was like they get the phone call, and then they're like, go to the front door, go to the back door, trying to lock them, but then with the whole home automation thing, and she's going, lock the doors, and it's like, doors locked, doors unlocked, and just like that, and it just kept sort of, the trailer felt like 3 minutes of just that dialogue.
They probably showed
constantly.
the full
I was
scene.
just like, I don't know whether I'm going to like this.
It's worth a home watch. Probably not a cinema watch, but probably the scariest thing in it is Courtney Cox's surgery. Jesus Christ. She has made a real mess of her face. And this is a good-looking woman, or used to be a good-looking woman. It's like looking at a fucking alien these days. Just why
that
do
is
they
a great
do it?
future show title too.
Wow.
She's made a real mess of her face. So
maybe it's canonical. Maybe they had to like borrow her face skin for the grafts from all the time she's been stabbed throughout the previous movies.
Maybe.
Well, since we covered the winners and losers in the rescue movie, and again, I mean, the nothing but the maddest of respects for all the people that showed up to help out those kids. I just hope those kids learn a lesson. When they get home, they're like, wow. Let me take some moments away from this thing and stop following people with 27 medals pinned on their chest. But the 8-Bit Christmas movie, I want to get back to that just a little bit, because that was fucking awesome. I mean, I think that it's perhaps the best Christmas movie to date. Now, I was really cautious about this movie. I wished I had watched it. I was so certain it would be a shit show, because these things are just too good to be true. There's such an agenda now you take certain, 6 basic premises, and then you wrap other things around it and call it a movie these days. So it's just crap and crap heaped on top of crap. But here they made a movie, and they did a couple things. When I saw the crap heaped on top.
Go ahead. I just put the YouTube on and hadn't muted it.
Oh, I just heard myself come back to myself. So, anyway, I hadn't really seen commercials for this movie. I just saw the box art for it, and I thought, okay, that seems like a giant pander to nostalgia in that it's done in a style. It's got everything in it, like basic image cues, right? So how do they fuck it up? How am I going to turn this on and find out they've just utterly done this wrong? So being that it was too good to be true, and that generally no good movies are made anymore, when I finally watched this thing, I honestly had to just sit there and ask myself, how did this get past the censors? I mean, how did this get made today? Because there is absolutely nothing wrong with it. It was just a Christmas movie. Not only that, my obvious interest in it was the premise that the movie was centered around the kids' quest for a Nintendo. Now, it might be a slightly different thing in the UK, but in the US, I've been saying for a very long time, where the hell are the movies about our era? About like that 70s, 80s kind of world, And, it's high time we had some decent movies set in those timelines. And Ghostbusters Afterlife, I thought, sort of gave some nods at that. It was, okay. The stupid Stranger Things thing, I think is dumb as hell, but, people say that kind of scratches it for many people. It doesn't for me, but okay. And I wanted at least, okay, maybe it's going to be kind of cool, like, 80s Christmas, right? And given it was centered around the kids, quest to get this NES, that was no joke, man. I mean, now that was sort of my little brother's, age group more so than mine, but the struggle was real and definitely had been the same for the Atari. At that age, the equivalent of like $1,000 video game console in today's dollars, you just didn't get that. Your parents had to buy it, or you got it through some other means, right? And, very few kids had that kind of cash to walk in and buy something like that. And yet that quest was real. And somebody got one, and then somebody else, and it was honestly spread out over 5 years that those consoles were really sold, and so people would get them at different times. But the Quest, like if there was something out there, like when the kids were like selling the magazine subscriptions and stuff, trying to raise money for the to buy the Nintendo or win it, and he ends up instead getting a fucking set of encyclopedias. All that was so perfectly done, and not just could have, but almost certainly did happen. I was talking to two of the millennials I work with, and we were chatting about the anti-video game hysteria of what allegedly how it's behavior altering and inspires horrible things and all that. And I said, look, dude, it was way worse. It was the exact same shit, but it was way worse when we were kids. And they're kind of like, well, I don't see how. I mean, like, what's so gory about, Pac-Man? I was like, oh, just you look. And so I showed them like some of the old YouTube clips of, parents being interviewed about the Super Nintendo crisis. Is it bad for youth at all? And, the blood and the violence, I mean, all the whole thing. And they're like, oh my God, they're making the same accusations about, Pac-Man. I was like, told you. So that's the neat thing about 8-Bit Christmas is they show that anti-video game hysteria that was being whipped up by, some groups. And just, from start to stop, the one thing that was a major surprise to me, and I actually had to watch it in 2 different parts because I started watching it when I got home from work one morning, and I was like, shit, I got to go to bed, but I'm going to watch the rest of it tomorrow. And I had to split it in 2 parts. So I was literally like the next day, I was just waiting to get home and watch the rest of this movie, which is rare. That just doesn't happen. It was supposed to be about this kid's quest to get a Nintendo, which it largely, was. But I got to the end, and I actually, like, it was the credits were going, I was like, oh shit, did he get his Nintendo? And I realized that, of course, that's not the point. I mean, a good Christmas movie, like It's a Wonderful Life, it's just the last few minutes of it that's really Christmas. They did a beautiful job of just doing a Christmas movie about family, about, the memories of Christmas. And in the end, it didn't really matter whether he got his Nintendo. That wasn't really the major point, even though the whole point of the movie is about him getting a Nintendo. I don't know if that makes a whole lot of sense, but that was my takeaway from it. Like, holy shit, they actually made a real Christmas movie. I'm utterly fucking befuddled that this made it through approval and distribution because it wasn't loaded with any of the mandatory propaganda of movies today. So, wonderful movie for me. I mean, I think now, Die Hard, 8-Bit Christmas, Yogi's Christmas Special. This is going to be right there in that top must-watch every year Christmas movies.
Yeah, I'll add it to the annual watch list, definitely. So that's it for movies. TV shows, Ozark was back. We watched that this week. It's good. No spoilers. It's quite new, so I won't say anything, but it's a good show. I like it. There's one I found recently. I was kind of reading a list of under-the-radar TV shows. I think it was something like that. I found one called The Terror, which is not as scary as it might sound. It's about 2 ships in sort of, I guess 1800s, something like that, maybe slightly later. And they go out on an Arctic journey looking for a route through the Arctic, to the rest of the world kind of thing. And they get snowed in for a winter, and they are not alone. But it's ramping up. I've watched a few of those now.
What's it called, Mike?
The Terror. Pretty good show. There's a few people in it you'll know from Game of Thrones. There's some decent actors in it. There's 2 seasons. I think it's a bit like American Horror Story. Each season is a different story, as far as I know. I'm still working my way through the first one, but it's been pretty good. Another one I found, I've not watched any yet, but I recommended it to someone at work. They've hammered their way through a lot of it. They say it's really good, but the episodes could be longer, and that's Mr. In Between, who is kind of sort of like a normal guy, but he takes no shit, and he's kind of almost a vigilante kind of thing. If he bumps into someone in the street, he just has no filter. So that's an Australian show, but the guy at work said, yeah, the episodes could be longer. They could have like an hour out of each one, but they compress it to half an hour. So that is on my list to watch. Read an interesting book. So I go on a site every so often. They have an RSS feed. It's called Project Gutenberg, and it's all like mainly classic books that are out of copyright, but there's some weird and wonderful books on there. And I read one recently called Detailed Minutiae of Soldier Life in the Army of Northern Virginia, 1861 to 1865. So obviously it's about, Confederate soldiers during the American Civil War, just, what they did day to day, how they formed different parts of the army. It describes some of the battles, a lot of which took place near you, Scott. Interesting little book.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The whole Manassas, First and Second Manassas, the first two battles of the Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally, I drive through the battlefield on my way to work every day. It's directly on my route.
Yeah. It's obviously an old book. It's written 1900 and something, early 1900s. So, get past the language of the day and you'll have a good time if you're into history and particularly, personal histories. It is, as it says, detailed minutiae. It's not about the battles, it's not about the generals, not about the strategies. It's about the day-to-day life of the average Confederate soldier. It's just a really interesting read. Another one I read, so I kind of do a mix of fiction and non-fiction, but this is another non-fiction one I read. Really interesting book. You might have heard of it. It's called In the Garden of Beasts by Eric Larson. And it's about the U.S. ambassador to Germany, William Todd. And he went over to the embassy in Berlin in 1934 and stayed until 1938. So you're looking the rise of Hitler just up until, the machinations of how the Second World War came about, kind of thing. And it's about him living in Berlin during that time and what was happening in that city. Really interesting book. He was over there with his family, and like his daughter was like this socialite, and she's going out with all these Nazi soldiers, and some of the big generals are trying to come on to her.
Did not see that coming.
Hey, just a really interesting book. Tons and tons of detail, and it's based on his diary and his daughter's diary, and it just shows you, the early days of the Nazi Party. Once Hitler was made Chancellor, how he went from that to becoming the Führer kind of thing, and it has like letters between him and Roosevelt and things like that. Just a fascinating book. So, this is Retro Gaming Roundup, so I'll round off with some games. So, I have finished Oracle of Seasons. So, I played Ages a couple of months ago. Finished Seasons. Really good couple of games. Did enjoy them. I did enter the code from one into the other, and it gives you certain things. So, really enjoyed that. I'm still playing through Indiana Jones' Fate of Atlantis quite slowly as it other things have taken precedence, but I'll get back to that. And I started Spirit Tracks, which is one of two Zelda games on the DS. I played Phantom Hourglass years ago, probably when it came out. And it's the DS. It's a little bit kiddified. You use the stylus for movement and that kind of thing. Once you get used to that, I did really enjoy Phantom Hourglass. This one, a little less so. I don't think it's as good a game as Phantom Hourglass, but I'm probably about halfway through it now. It's all right. If you're a completist and you want to play them all, play it. But it's certainly not the best Zelda game, but it's all right. And a bit of miscellany. So we talked in the top 10 about Star Wars Rogue Squadron on the N64. And a guy we've interviewed on the show, Gaming Jay, has a YouTube channel where he's playing through the book 1001 Video Games to Play Before You Die. He's done a video. It's not his most recent now, but it's a very recent one where he plays... it's about an hour video, something like that, and he plays through a lot of Rogue Squadron on the N64. So check that video out. And finally... I'll save the last bit for a news item. I'll do the first news item as that one. I bought the new MacBook Air, the M1. So I had a MacBook Air before. It was the last of the Intel ones, but it's the ones where they changed the keyboard. They had like a butterfly keyboard, they call it. So mechanism beneath the keys, they changed, and it wasn't extremely reliable. So I've had this thing about 3 or 4 years, and I've had one keyboard replacement and one keyboard repair on it in that time. The cursor keys, because I tend to use those a lot when I'm scrolling up and down all the heavy-duty programming I do. So I've boxed that one up. I'm going to sell that one, and I got the new M1. So I've played with it quite a bit. It is faster. Most of the programs I run are not built specifically for it, so they run through the Rosetta. But the native programs do launch a lot more quickly. But the main thing is the battery life. The battery life, I have noticed, is a lot better than the previous MacBook Air. So that is my last month.
So I'll be honest, Mike, I was wondering, I missed the part where I guess you said MacBook, whatever. I was like, Rosetta launch? What the fuck is he talking about? Never heard of these things.
So it's, so we know Apple used to use their own process, well, the PowerPC kind of processor.
Yeah.
And then they switched to Intel, so you could dual boot it with Windows, run Windows VMs. And now, last year, I think it was, maybe the year before, they went back to doing their own processors called the M1. So you can get programs that are written natively for it. But if you're running programs that were written for an Intel processor, they have like this translation layer called Rosetta. So the first time you run one of those programs on it, it says, you need Rosetta to do this. Do you want to download it? Yeah. Just click yes, and it does it all behind the scenes, and then your program opens. And you never need to do it again. They all run through this kind of Rosetta translation layer. The only caveat is I have a couple of VMs on my Mac, a Windows one and a Linux one. The only caveat is you have to get ARM-based versions of those OSs for your VMs, but they are back to running on their own processors.
It's funny. Apple, I mean, every time I look at them, I scratch my head as to how the hell they got where they are and stay where they are. When they introduced the Mac, and I got an SE30 sitting right here, that was pretty revolutionary. It looked different, it felt different, and it created this like cult-like following that kind of like the Commodore had. And then of course during the 90s, they're literally falling apart. They are all but done for. They roll out the iMac, all of a sudden they're interesting again. And they've always had like the most abysmal specs compared to, real hardware. They get so little out of so much. And then the price is always just, add 1,000 or what. I'm just drawn for how the fuck they ever succeed at anything. And then here they are, the Apple iPhones, just, one of the top two, ubiquitous. And the changes they made though, like when they left the PowerPC, which was a dead end architecture, okay, so they go over to Intel's. Great. Intel isn't dead ending anytime soon. The only thing Intel's doing that I have issue with is like that Intel management engine, which creates backdoors for anybody that Intel and people they like, are deemed worthy of having. So it's more or less going, your computer has unlimited access to whoever we deem worthy of it has, and no, you can't get out of it. Apple is not a security conscious company. They're already rifling through your shit as bad as Google is. They're just, they just smile about it more. How the fuck did that happen? I mean, they changed away from architecture for no justifiable reason, and now they have to do an entire reorganization again. I haven't heard one justifiable reason for the change. I mean, what have you heard?
I heard rumblings that there were problems with the way Intel were going, and so they wanted to get away from that and take back more control. But the Intel i9 I'm reading is very good. Tech people have been impressed with it. So I don't know exactly why they switched back. But I'm not in the world of Mac by any stretch of the imagination. I don't have an iPhone. I just have the MacBook Air as a daily driver laptop. A lot of the time I use remote desktop to connect to my other PCs. There's no data on there. I don't use iCloud. I really like the interface for just tooling around. If I'm doing something creative, maybe it's writing, maybe it's putting the podcast together, I do that on Windows because you run an OS part of the reason is because of the software you can get on it, and I use Windows software. Some of the apps I use most of the time on a computer are Windows only. And so I use a Mac as a daily driver. But if I'm just tooling around, browsing, doing emails, things like that, I think the Mac is just so much easier and cleaner for doing that. It doesn't crash. Oh, it hasn't on me yet. It doesn't crash. And I really love the trackpad gestures. You can, just get those down to a T. And Windows laptops are running Linux on, an Intel laptop just isn't the same. Those gestures, just tooling around the internet and emails, are what make it for me. And so I just love that experience. But like I say, if I'm being creative or doing anything that, involves work, then I switch away from it. They do a lot of things that annoy me, Oh, you can't cut and paste. You've got to copy it and then go back and delete the original. Well, fuck you. Why? Just stupid things like that annoy me. But for just twatting around, I think it's the best.
Yeah,
I just look at it like, why would I use if Mac is a port, it's a distro of Linux, is what it is. So it's a reskin of Linux. So why indulge all of Apple's eccentricities and not just run Linux? I don't know, man. If I want to do that, I just go to the frickin' CLI and, MV whatever to space M whatever, done. I don't know. I just don't need any of their help.
Yeah, I've not really ever been a fan of Mac OS whenever I've tried to use it for anything. But in terms of why they switched from Intel I think it's just a combination of Intel was struggling with the process technology, and the power consumption. And yes, they
always have since the 486.
Well, yeah. 12th gen's got on top of things a lot better. But, it just was, they weren't going fast enough for Apple. And then Apple wanted to also add, on-chip AI. And they were, developing acceleration specifically for their video codecs that they use for Final Cut Pro. So it just made sense for them to just roll everything, basically roll their own processor, and they can be in charge of when they're scheduling orders in, to get it actually manufactured. They're not waiting on Intel and having to schedule it around Intel's other work. They can just go to TSMC and say, right, we've spent billions with you in the last year through the iPhone processors, so we want priority on these bigger chips that we want to put in our laptops. And they just turn around and say, yeah, no worries, off you go.
But then again, the same company, if that's what their goal is, they'll turn around and they'll go to, say, the company that makes the charge controllers for the Mac Air. And they'll say, okay, so this charge controller you manufacture, the 101, right? It's exactly what we want, okay? But what we want you to do is make the 101A, and we want you to swap power and ground pins. Then you're not going to sell it to anybody else, or we're not going to place an order. So that now you can't buy simple repair parts, so that Apple can make you buy a $1,000 board for a $1 chip. Now, my reaction to that is, okay, all that sounds wonderful and good, Apple. It's kind of clever. I'm never going to buy your thing, ever, because you do this. I can't imagine it working out, but I guess there's enough people that go, okay.
I'm the same, but there's just, I've just got friends that just, they just fawn over it all and just buy it, even though they could get, the same hardware for half the price. But, just the way it is, isn't it?
It doesn't mean it makes sense. It's the way it is. I'm completely tearing my hair out of why it is.
So what have you been up to this month?
Me? So, film-wise, like I said, I watched The Matrix 4. I want to watch it again before I make a final verdict on it, but certainly the first sort of 40 minutes, had me enthralled. Nice little sort of digs at the AAA games industry. Certainly publishers and marketing, which were quite amusing. But then also just a lot of what is reality kind of stuff going on. It then sort of got back into, we'll say, familiar territory, and maybe lost its way a bit from then on. So yeah, that's the bit I'm not so sure about. I watched 8-Bit Christmas as well. It was, I say, it was good. It's not really my kind of film. I watched Cabin in the Woods, which I'd never watched.
I've not seen
somehow
that.
managed. See, I somehow managed to avoid a load of stuff about it. And my ex went to watch it when it came out, and I remember not getting her not to tell me anything. But then all I sort of knew was that some shit kind of goes down at the end, towards the end. But it was a completely different film to what I was expecting. I was just expecting some sort of like, oh yeah, these people are staying in this cabin in the woods, and it's spooky, and it's just a sort of general horror, film along those lines. But it's not. It's quite different. Well worth a watch. So yeah, I'm not saying anything more. I watched the new Resident Evil, and so that, coming from having just watched all of the other Resident Evil films, it sticks a lot closer to the game's sort of canon and storylines and themes, but I think that's more to its detriment, and it's generally not a very good film, no matter what license or whatever, if it was an original story, and so it feels like they sort of shoehorn so much into the first sort of 20 minutes of like, we've got to get all the fans, like put all the things in for the fans early on, and they really do Leon Kennedy like a disservice. They really do a dirty on him, which is a bit of a shame. So yeah, definitely don't spend any money on watching that. Would be my advice. And the other film, I watched The Gentleman.
Oh yeah, it's a great film.
And that was quite good, yeah. I watched it in two halves, and the first half just felt like I was sitting through 45 minutes of exposition, and I was kind of like, is this going to get going? Does it just do this the whole way through? Like, and it just tells this story. But then no, the second half was, everything kicked off. That was, really cool in the end. TV-wise, watched The Witcher Season 2. Very different to the first season because it's a linear storytelling rather than the non-linear of the first season, and some weird bits where they sort of mixed up timeline-wise, where some of the short story bits come into it. But they did that for character building reasons. And I think it was all right, but I mean, I think it's easier to get into than the first season, but I think the first season is stronger just because it's a bit more interesting, a bit different the way it's ordered. But yeah, it's decent. It's worth watching, certainly. And I watched the Xbox documentary. That was good. Quite sort of interesting. Like, a lot of it was sort of looking back at how much they fucked things up, and how things shouldn't have ever worked as well as they did. It wasn't just a fluff piece of patting ourselves on the back and going, "Oh, we're brilliant, we're Microsoft."
Is that the Power On series?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've watched the first one. So yeah, it's a 4-parter, I think. I've watched the first one.
6, I think.
6. Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know it's out there. I have yet to see it, but I want to.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. And yeah, like I say, it's not just like a marketing experiment. It's actually some quite insightful stuff and some interesting sort of things about how putting together the prototypes, and there's the separate teams that were putting things together and then both pitching in the same room to Bill and Steve Ballmer, and the sort of the conflict of the two approaches and things like that, and the times when Bill just called them all wankers essentially and thought they were doing a terrible job, but so yeah, it's pretty cool. Games wise, I sort of did had Witcher 2, not related to the fact that the TV series came out at the same time, but had that earmarked for sort of a game over Christmas for a while, and that's sort of been my long form game. I'm still playing that now. Well, I didn't play as much as I did wanted to at Christmas because I kept getting sidetracked with Loop Hero and Dicey Dungeons. Loop Hero is a nice little pixel art thing. Good little sort of background game as well. But I played through Sonic 1 again, which I hadn't done for fucking ages. I hadn't really played past the first 2 or 3 worlds anytime sort of in the last decade. Kind of forgotten that game sort of takes a turn and for the worst. Goes from sort of, the earlier stages is kind of you can fall down off into a hole and then actually you just end up in a different part of the level, sort of a different route. Might be not as fun or a bit trickier, but you get through it and suddenly there's a point where I sort of fell through a hole and thought, oh, that's fine, I should be going on to a different part of the level. Oh no, it's a bottomless pit. And it kept sort of doing that, and then lots of sort of cheap enemies get thrown at you as you get towards the end. So it wasn't, kind of soured me a bit on it.
The last level I found annoying. Is that on the airship?
Yeah. Yes. I'm trying to think back now. There was a couple of auto-scrolling bits towards the end that were annoying, and something. What was there's some stuff with the final. I didn't think the final like Scrap Brain was too bad. Maybe some of the earlier stuff, but well, I think I seem to remember Sonic 2 as well. Like it all went a bit wrong on the very final sort of stages, especially as whenever I got there with Supersonic, I got stuck in the level scenery at the same point every time, which was really annoying, and you just had to let the timer run down to die. And I jumped back into Donkey Kong Country 2 as well. Just slowly making my way through that. It's something that I'd played the first one so much, and I was effectively speed running it before. I certainly had a new speed running was a thing. But the second and third ones, I think I might have kind of drifted away from my SNES by then, was more into PC stuff. So I never got them, and I never sort of thought, whenever I had tried them, thought they were quite as good or couldn't capture the same sort of feeling. But I'm enjoying it now. I'm sort of diving back in again. And I got a new tablet finally, because mine has sort of been limping along for a while. Got it in 2013, so it's done pretty well. But the new one's powerful enough to run the new PS2 emulator on Android, as well as Dolphin. So I've been sort of messing around with seeing what I can get to run on it with that as well. And then finally, over Christmas break, I revisited Blender, which had been a few years since I last played with that. I've forgotten how it worked, but made up a new podcast logo for the year. So I had a bit of fun diving back into that, and might be tempted to try and print some hoodies or at least t-shirts or excuse me, something with it.
Mr. Muldoon. Hello, America.
America is here. I just didn't know. I just heard random, like he hit a wall, just ran into something. His audio just suddenly kind of like stopped. All right, so I've actually got some projects done and been doing little retro gaming projects. I don't know, about 2 years ago, I did a pretty cool build of a hot rodded Tandy 1000 HX. And it's always just been a favorite computer of mine. It looks a little bit like an Amiga 500, performs nothing like one, nowhere near. It's a PC XT in a fancy case is what it is. And the cards for it, instead of being standard ISA cards, it's this sort of, keyboard, computer all-in-one format. So the ISA cards, it uses the ISA bus, but it's this proprietary, stack of cards. So they snap onto each other vertically. It's the weirdest, way of doing cards. It was obviously done as kind of a cost reduced, setup, but it actually had to have cost more than just using existing cards, which were plentiful. So I'm always baffled, but I enjoyed hot rodding this thing back in the day. I did the hard drive mod for it, which it does not intend to support a hard drive from the factory. VGA graphics on it, which is just really funny. Trying to feed VGA with a 8088 is kind of a challenge. And there's some things that work well, some things that don't. But I don't know why. It's just fun to mess with. So I've got one 1000HX that I sort of set up as like the gaming machine. It's got the VGA card in it, sound card, all that. And I wanted to set up another one just as my BBS machine, just for doing BBSing. So I finally got around to it. I got another 1000HX, and it's set up with a 500 megabyte IDE card, the compact flash, set up as a hard drive. It has the 720K floppy still in it. And then it's got the memory expansion with the double serial and VGA, and the main thing would be in the Wi-Fi modem. So I now have that computer up online, running. I can log on to the BBSs. The principal challenge, I get into this in the hardware flashback, was getting it to connect to modern monitors, which, it's shocking how fast some of those interfaces have disappeared. Like, when we lost, VGA was going away. It's like, okay, but, that's fine. And then I've got a new monitor. It doesn't even have HDMI. It's just DisplayPort. So, oh, crap. Now I got to go HDMI out to DisplayPort. That doesn't work so well. So, it's going to be a challenge to connect, as monitors evolve, to connect these retro computers to them. So anyway, I got all that solved. That'll be in the hardware flashback. And then the gaming on it, since I got it all up and running and everything's behaving with the network and all that, and on the monitor, I wanted to just start playing a couple great DOS games. So I started playing Ultima 4 Quest of the Avatar on the Tandy 1000HX, and it looks so good, sounds just great, with that Tandy audio system. So I've really, really been enjoying the 1000HX. Of course, I now have two 1000HXs and a C64 set up on Retro Gaming Roundup Studio bench. So I had to add on to the bench, make a little more space so all those computers can work. And on the same monitor, I've got set up on the other input, the Commodore 64. So yesterday, I kind of spent the day playing through some Ultima 4, taking a break every now and then to go play Mr. TNT on the Commodore 64. Mr. TNT is a great overlooked game. I've been having a lot of fun with that. That's going to, I think, make it into a next top 10. I can find a way to fit it in. But anyway, it's just really cool. But one of the things I can't help taking away is how the Commodore 64 stayed in production and stayed relevant a long time after its introduction. And you got to remember, that thing came out 82, 83. It's running 64 kilobytes of memory. And, just not that powerful. And I got next to it the 1000HX, which has, CGA, EGA graphics. It's got, an NEC V20 now, 640K of RAM, 500 megabyte, hard drive. It's pimped out, but still. The baseline processing is still essentially unchanged, only maybe the 10% bump from an NEC V20. But anyway, watching the Commodore 64 with Mr. TNT running next to the IBM PC, and the Commodore looks better and plays better. Yeah, it's doing it on a tenth of the memory and a fraction of the available I/O and no hardware, hard drive storage or anything, but man, just what an amazing computer. I've never ceased to be amazed by the Commodore 64 and just how well it delivers compared to allegedly technologically superior, models. So just a lot of good times playing around with classic computers.
Yeah, I run my 64 as my main machine from 83 when I got it till 92 when I got the Amiga 500. and I was still loving it. Still playing loads of games on it. I'd upgraded, to a disk drive a few years prior, but yeah, still loved it. And sold it, and sold it for a decent price as well. Even in '92, people were looking to buy C64s.
Oh yeah, I mean, I remember I had gotten rid of mine at some point. I don't remember, and so I ended up buying another one in like 90. It was right before I moved to Germany, so it must have been 92. I bought one, and then I get to Germany, and Commodore stuff is everywhere still. And it was like literally going back in time 10 years. You go into a computer store, and it's all Commodore 64 stuff and Amiga, But I just loved having a Commodore again, and I've always had one since then.
Yeah. All right. With all that done, time for some news then. And I will kick us off with the biggest news item of the month. So, we've all heard, I'm guessing, of Humble Bundle. They do software bundles, they do book bundles, and they do game bundles. So the book one I will talk about in particular. So every sort of 6 weeks, 2 months or so, they gather up a collection of video game related books. And they have 9 books usually in a bundle. They have 3 featured ones and 6 bonus ones. And it's a pay as much as you want kind of model. And so you can find them on social media. You can sign up to the email lists. I'm on all 3 of those lists. I don't know if they do other bundles. They may do. But those are the 3 I'm signed up to. And they reached out to me, courted me, in fact, as Random said.
I love it.
I can't claim credit for that joke. It was Random's. But yes, they courted me probably October, November time and said, would you like to be in, an upcoming story bundle? So I said, yes, I would. Thank you very much. And so the current bundle is called the Snowdin Game Bundle. So there are 9 video game related books, and Smoke and Mirrors is one of the 3 featured. So if you, there is a link in the show notes, as there will be to all the news items we do tonight. If you want to get those 3 featured books, you pay $5 or more. It's a pay as you want, as much as you want model. If you want all 9, you only have to pay $15 or more. So get on there in the next couple of weeks. I think it runs for about 3 weeks. And enjoy a copy of Smoke and Mirrors along with 8 other video game related books. Quickly, those are Inside Video Game Creation by Todd Mitchell, Smoke and Mirrors, of course, by me, The Black Book of Animal Crossing New Horizons, 2nd edition by John Harris. And the 6 bonus books are The Unofficial Guide to the Shin Megami Tensei and Persona by Kurt Kalata, We Love Atari Games Part 1 by John Harris, Game Dev Stories Volume 5 by David Craddock, Monsters in the Dark, The Making of XCOM by David Craddock, Boss Fight Books, Nightmare Mode by Gabe Durham and Michael Williams, and Boss Fight Books Silent Hill 2 by Mike Drucker. So if you fancy any or all of those books, click the link in the show notes to the Snowdin game bundle and get yourself another copy, if one isn't enough, of Smoke and Mirrors.
Any feedback yet?
Yeah, so I don't get live data. We kind of get daily updates. I don't know if they're public knowledge, but at the moment, they are. It's been running, I think, 48 hours, something like that, maybe just over. Last time I looked, there was just under 200 people had bought in, and 97% had done all 9 books. So, yeah, it seems to be going pretty well. It's out on, all the authors' Twitter feeds and social media and stuff, people plugging it. I even fired up the Coleco Chameleon Twitter and put it on there for the first time in a long time. So, yeah, click the link in the show notes and you will find it.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing, what the new audience has to say, because this is a new exposure for the book.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing what they have to say about it.
Yeah, other than our social medias and things like that and the interviews I did reaching new audiences, it's mainly our audience and the people on Atari Age and that kind of thing, and people who watch Pat and Ian who know about it. So this, will have a wider reach into thus untapped audiences. So it'll be good to spread it far and wide.
Very good. Very good. Moving on, I've got a Kickstarter here that my...
You are cutting out, Random. I don't know if it's a cable issue or a connection issue, but you're cutting out a bit.
That was what was happening earlier when I was trying to talk to Dave, and his audio was just either non-existent or would just stop.
Right.
Hello? Am I working?
You're working now. Give it another go.
All right. Weird. Okay. So, Mike sent in a Kickstarter for... We've had the orange box, but this is the orange cartridge. Not only is it cartridges, but it's also FPGA hardware, which is inside the cartridge. What this allows you to do, this is for the C64 and the C128. Not only can you use it as a programmable ROM cartridge to do things, you can obviously use the FPGA for whatever your mind can think of in terms of creating add-on accelerators for it all built in. So that's pretty cool. They are asking for 62,500 Swedish krona, and they've got just over 77,000. So they're going to make it, and there are some of the limited. I think there's one early left. Although hang on, I don't understand their rewards, because the one that's called early is more expensive than the standard. Usually the early bird's slightly cheap to get you in, but whatever. Oh, it's from the prototype, so you get the prototypes a bit early, but they cost more. So if that's something you feel like fiddling about with, check that out.
An FPGA in a commercial product. Who knew?
Yeah. And cartridges.
So we got one here from Neil, and he has titled this "The First Ever Video Game?" And this is a video on the YouTube channel Ahoy, which is one I subscribed to, watched a few of their videos. Good in-depth documentaries. The guy's got an easy-to-listen-to voice, well presented. It's an old one, this, from October 2019. It's one I watched when it came out. And Neil says in his email, "Here is a presentation where some guy tells us how difficult it is to answer the age-old question, what was the first video game?" And at the end he says, then he answers it. I did watch this at the time. Should I spoil it? Probably not, but he goes way back, some early examples. Christopher Strachey's Drafts was first implemented around 1951, but confirmed working by 1952. The actual term video game dates to around 1972, and I won't tell you exactly what it was in the findings at the end, but decent video, great channel. Check it out.
That email was a bit of a disappointment, because the subject line is "First Ever Video Game," so I thought it was one of my my porny ones, but it's not.
It's not George.
This one here is weird, and I started reading it, and it started sounding weird. One of the great sites out there is like Babylon Bee, where, they just come up with the most ridiculous of things. And I was watching a one about this guy. He was a motorcycle racer who began self-identifying as a bicycle racer and winning all these bicycle races. And you got to watch this thing. It's brilliant, because it gets like near the end. And it's like, what did anybody complain? Oh, no, not if you want to keep your job or your reputation. And they show this guy who's like a bicyclist, and he's like, I used to be the world's fastest bicyclist until I pointed out that Norm was a motorcyclist. And then They kicked me off the team. They crushed my bicycle with a steamroller, and they kidnapped my children. But it's the parodies of things are pretty good. When I saw this link to this article, I looked at it and said, is this a like a Babylon Bee? Is this like a parody, or is this real? And honestly, I'm still not really sure. But it's from Ryan Toole, and he says Nintendo sues a guy for $25 he made selling N64 on eBay. And it's a place called theharddrive.net. Nintendo sues a guy for $25 he makes selling N64 on eBay. Now, this is the story. It's only like a few paragraphs, so I'm just going to read it. And I got 3 paragraphs into 4 paragraphs before it was my turn to read an article, so you're going to find out the ending with me. All right. Burlington, Vermont. Nintendo has declared its latest lawsuit will be suing a guy in Vermont that made $25 selling his old Nintendo 64 on eBay. Well, okay, Nintendo 64 is worth way more than $25. All right. Wow, it really wasn't worth it at all, said Aaron Wells, shortly after being served a notice to appear in a Washington courtroom for an upcoming pre-trial regarding his unlicensed Nintendo profiteering. I found this thing in the attic and figured it wasn't doing any good up there, so I just listed it online. Is that a problem? How could I go to prison for this? Representatives from Nintendo defended what many have called an overreaction. Here at Nintendo, we are dedicated to maintaining Nintendo's long-established identity, explained Doug Bowser, Nintendo of America president, and never gets old. As such, we simply cannot let our players also be the ones buying and selling the units, as well as dictating the prices in terms of sale. This disrupts our relationship between us and the public, really threatens our perception as a family-friendly company, and that is why we will sue any man, woman, or child that even so much as draws a picture of Mario, because we care. All right, it's a parody. Good. Critics of Nintendo say it's just the latest in a series of egregious oversteps by the famously litigious organization. Frankly, I think we're going to be hearing a lot more about this sort of thing, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. All right. Fucking clever. As a press time, a couple of guys were kicking the shit out of a guy dressed up like Mario in Times Square. And then there's always people that, like, sound like Nintendo needs to learn to blah, blah, blah. I won't stand for this, blah, blah, blah. Oh, wow. That's pretty funny. Hats off to that. That's clever.
It is something else clever, Nintendo related, is sent in by David Gyrick. I think we've had this one before, but it's always a good one. Wi-Fi Game Boy cartridge. And they have indeed got a Game Boy connecting to Wi-Fi. Now, is it playing a game over Wi-Fi? Is it playing a multiplayer game over Wi-Fi? No, it isn't. It's just connecting to Wi-Fi. But I suppose it's pretty cool if you've got a lot of time on your hands.
I saw a guy was streaming like Grand Theft Audio to it. I mean, Grand Theft Audio.
Yeah.
Grand Theft Audio. The video. I was like, that's pretty fucking clever.
Yeah. I think someone submitted that one further down. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah.
Thanks, Dave.
It was. I'm just trying to find it now. I know we got it somewhere.
Gareth Hamer, I think.
Gareth, probably.
Down towards the bottom.
Scott has talked, and I've mentioned in the past, the pinball site, Marco Specialties. Well, the owner, Mark Mandeltort, has sadly passed away, I think in this last month. The article links to a bit of a write-up on Pinball News. And so I think from what I was reading, someone is picking up the Marco Specialties site. I don't know if there's a further update to that story, but it is a great site for pinball spares and parts and that kind of thing.
So I've been buying from Marco Specialties since I found out they existed. When I first got into pinball collecting, there's a lot of places out there, a lot. And many of them are very good. Some of them tend to specialize on one thing. Like, we're just going to do LED kits. We're just going to do this. We're just going to do, it depends. But Marco tended to just have the hugest stock of everything. And their shipping times were, very quick. They just seemed like they really knew what they were doing. And then I got to meet him a couple of times at various expos. And, the more I got to chat with the guy, he seemed like an interesting guy, and just beyond pinball, And we were chatting once about, I said, well, I'd sure love to come down there and visit the establishment at some point. And do you let people in and show them the back room or whatever? And he was like, oh, yeah, we can do that. Well, how far away are you? And, I told him, where I was at. And I said, I'll just probably fly down. Is there an airport near you, like a small airport, And he goes, oh, there's one right around the corner from the factory. So I ended up just popping down there. And the guy comes over, picks me up at the FBO in his car. We drive over to the shop. He shows me, the operation, all that. And we just have this great talk. And he was so enthusiastic. And, he said to me at one point, oh, I just can't believe I get to do this. Like, here I am. I'm like a pinball guy, And that's like, he was ecstatic to be a pinball guy, Many, many times I've bought from them. I hope whoever takes over ops and however that goes, they preserve sort of the culture of the company. Because just really, really nice guys over there. So it's sad. We don't all live forever. So there's going to be, people that come and go from this hobby. And kind of like, when we were kids, rock and roll stars weren't old because rock and roll was new. I remember, what was it, 1991, hearing on the radio, the Rolling Stones coming to Memphis, better see them now before they're gone. And, oh, God, yeah, the Rolling Stones, holy shit, right? And, same thing, man. It's just, it's sad, but it's what it is. So, farewell, Mark, and, thanks for running a great company and doing what you did for pinball.
I've got another Kickstarter, which has been sent in by David Picklerick. And this one looks to be all in Japanese, but if you scroll down, you do get to some English. It's a documentary about Japanese developer. I never know how to say this their name, so I'm just going to say Toplan. And sort of shoot 'em up fans will recognise the name. Casual meme fans may recognise Zero Wing and the All Your Base Belong to Us gubbins. But this could be quite an interesting little release. It's only got 65 hours left, so I don't know whether it's going to be live once the show comes out. But it's about 30 US fun bucks it works out to for a digital copy of the film. And then there'll be a Blu-ray, bit more for a Blu-ray release. But they might, if you miss out on the Kickstarter, it might end up knocking around and floating about the internet, no doubt, for more money or not, perhaps. So yeah, one I should be trying to keep an eye on, I think.
The disturbing thing about that email is both of the links in the email says access to this page has been denied, but it hasn't because you click on it and it works.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
So right underneath that one was one that I almost wish there's a way we could do this as a full review. It'd take forever, though. And it's sent in by David Gyrich again. And it is the top 100 games ranked by Japanese gamers. And what's so funny about this list, there's games in here I've never heard of. But then there's games that make total sense, and it would be the same way I would rank it, and I'm certainly not Japanese. But it's interesting, though. Like, I'll look at the top 10, okay? Breath of the Wild. Okay, fair enough. Major fucking game. Can't wait for the next installment. Dragon Quest V. Okay, very Japanese choice. Final Fantasy VII. Yeah, I could see that showing up on American, list in the same ranking too. Animal Crossing, of all the things, very strange. Splatoon. Dragon Quest III. Okay, and I'm a fan of the Dragon Quest. I really am. Super Smash Brothers Ultimate, Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy X, and Super Mario 3. Kind of a surprise there too, Mario 3. But and then we get into there's a lot of Pokemon, and I'm sure this would be the only thing you can't really chart here is the generational impact, because a top 10 from like us, the three of us, is going to be very different than like a top 10 from, college students. So it's a lot to kind of scratch your head over. But when we get into, say, the top, let's say the last 100, the top 10, bottom 10 of the 100, Persona 3, Persona 4, Pocket Monsters, Super Mario World, Romance of the Three Kingdoms, Mother, Fire Emblem, Persona 5, Monster Hunter, Street Fighter 2. Wow, what a weird, bookends to that thing.
Yeah.
And then there's some I've just never heard of. Anything on here that stands out to you guys?
I did have a look down this, and as you said, there's a lot of Japanese stuff. Kingdom Hearts is only middle of the list. I thought that would have been a lot bigger over there. Not one I've played.
They've got
but,
Kingdom Hearts 2 in 16.
Right, I'm skip past that one. I thought that, might have been higher. Not too many surprises. They've probably got Monster Hunter games higher up, but there's a couple there down in 86 and 87. Again, I would have thought they may be higher. Mother is only 95. And, from what we hear of Mother, it's like, oh my God, you got to play Mother kind of thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Mother 2 is a bit further up. But yeah, I was quite surprised how low the Monster Hunters are, considering how big they've been relatively for the, the PSP and the 3DS and the Switch. They've been kind of the big system sellers, it feels, or at least that's the way it's been sort of given to us.
Super Mario Galaxy, only in 56. That's one of the best Mario games, I think.
That's a terrible game.
No. Galaxy's a great
wonderful game.
Yeah.
Fucking awful. No. Worst Mario game apart from Mario Teaches Typing or Hotel Mario.
You are just wrong.
That brings me on to an idea I had for a top 10 actually, which was worst games in beloved franchises. So your Zelda CDIs and your Mario, Hotel Marios and all that Mario Missing and that kind of thing. Maybe something to ruminate on at some point.
Just made a note of it.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose it's a pretty fair list. There's not.
I mean, they're all subjective anyway, aren't they? Pretty much.
Yeah, and the Japanese market's fucking weird nowadays. It's
Japan's
so small.
Fucking weird.
Well, yeah. But in terms of gaming and stuff, it's so tiny and it's just straight. I mean, like so many people now play Apex Legends on the Switch in Japan, but then no one else, outside of the, certainly in the West, no one would play it on the Switch, and it's very strange.
Millie's playing Fortnite on the Switch like all the time.
Yeah. Number 30 is Apex Legends, so yeah.
So we got one here from David Gyrick, and it is the Page Boy, Nintendo's lost Game Boy add-on. Now I think again this is one we've had before, but it's weird this video. I'm trying to skip through it and find the Page Boy, but they talk about like every Nintendo Game Boy add-on. So is this the one they're talking about? Is this the one they're talking about? But it's worth a watch the video anyway. Pinball related one. Stern announces another new game. We got sent this one a few times, and it is Rush. So we love the pinball games that are related to bands, AC/DC, Metallica, the standout ones for me.
Kiss.
Kiss for Scott. And now they're coming out with Rush. It just says coming soon on this link. No doubt Stern's website will have maybe some updated information or even a date, but I was hoping to see. I did skim through this. It mustn't be this link. I must have searched for it for the tunes they were going to put on. And Tom Sawyer is about video games. It's about Space Invaders. It's not in there. So that was a big miss for me. I mean, it's a great fucking track. And also it's about video games, and they didn't put it in. So swing and a miss on that count, but they have got lots of other good tunes.
Wow, that's of all things to miss.
Yeah.
Did you see this Computer Space one, Scott?
Sorry, I'm choking on my own phlegm right now. I had
Better than someone else's.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I was on tenterhooks waiting for what that word
Depends
was
how
going
you
to be
look
that
at
he
it.
was choking on.
Yeah.
Choking on my own cock.
Good job he's
yeah,
not
so
got
it was-
video.
It was to the Dave sent this one in, which is an article of that says the real reason you haven't heard of Computer Space, and he's asked. Well, he says that they seem to think that it failed because not that it was because it was too complicated, but it was too easy compared to the original version. What do you think? So, which I thought was probably best answered probably by Scott, I would imagine.
Well, yeah. So
First, you have to presume it failed.
Well, yeah.
Well, yeah. So Ed Fry's, some time ago, he got a Computer Space to restore, and his dad, had been a TV repair aficionado, I guess, and they had found the chassis and swapped it to repair the monitor and all, and he had done some writing on this at the time. And they kind of tag on to that here. Computer Space was innovative, but how was it to play? By Ed Fry's. And there's a lot of the traditional thing is, Computer Space isn't a very good game. That was put out there and repeated for decades by people who never touched nor saw a real Computer Space ever. So there was that. And it says the premise here is that it doesn't really have gravity. There's no central pull, right? Well, so what? And then Jerry Jessup, who used to work at Atari, I haven't heard from him in years. I ran into him back in the day. When I say back in the day, I mean like 2002 or so at Classic Gaming Expo. I think it was almost still World of Atari at that point. And he had said, well, it was just kind of terrible. They just kind of skidded around. I knew why it failed. I was like, okay. So everybody has their opinion. I mean, there are games I don't like that succeeded wonderfully. Anyway, I look at it that Computer Space, when it came out, it was so radically different. I think a lot of things were stacked against it. One was the fear of the operators. The operators, these were not technologically savvy people. They were clever. It's like think of like farmers. Farmers have to be able to work on all their equipment, and they have to be mechanically minded. They're not engineers, but they can keep equipment running in the field. And that's kind of how the pinball world was. They were not engineers. They were guys that kept things running in the field. And if you look at the first, documentation of Computer Space, the first write-ups and all, and it would make clear that you more or less needed an electronics engineer on staff. I mean, hell, you look at one of the most amazing manuals I've ever seen is the one for Atari Video Pinball. And they go into this on a computer science master's level of, what it's like to repair one of these. And they break down into, they presume a level of knowledge, at least at the master's level for electrical engineering. And I'm just amazed. I'm like, and you're fucking sending this manual out to a guy who's the tech at the mall arcade who has struggles changing out a monitor. And so there's that. Now, in all fair credit to those guys, they tried to mitigate this fear. They actually put out a sort of a flyer, and they described the brain box as being this independent unit. You take it out, you send it to us, we'll fix it, we'll send back the brain box. And they tried to make it sound like just a black box is sitting there. Don't you worry about it. And I think it scared the hell out of a lot of operators. And when it was a lot of money to ask, it was a lot to put on location. If it didn't work, they didn't know what to do with it. I think a lot of operators really felt like they'd be in over their heads. The other thing is that I think when it was out there, it didn't look like anything else. It didn't really fit like anything else. And it was, I mean, if you were walking up to it for the first time, it'd be a little confounding. So I think the operators were naturally hesitant. And when they saw a hesitancy on the part of some customers, it just kind of, sometimes you can just sort of talk yourself into something being a thing, and you can almost will something into existence. I think that may have been what happened here, that people just, mainly operators, talked themselves into the idea computer space wasn't going to be very good or wasn't going to be accepted. And, of course, when Pong came out, and it literally was just one card edge connector on one PCB, and it was no harder to understand than, say, a pinball, even simpler. I think that took away a lot of the fears. And then, of course, it was so simple that the populace accepted it. And then they couldn't really argue with the money that was pouring out of those coin boxes. So I think it's a lot of reasons, but a lot of it goes back to the operators and their perception.
Dumb computer space question. So it's kind of the birth of the video game industry, but not the birth, of arcades. You'd had pinballs for years. So when Computer Space came out, was it down to the arcade owner to buy it, the operator on a route to buy it, and how much was it when it came out?
So honestly, I have never seen an actual receipt. I have, much like, remember when they were looking for the ET cartridges that were dumped, right? And we read statements of empirical fact. Absolutely. This never happened. Listen to me. Do you understand? I am an expert. Then you read the empirical statement. They were buried there. Everybody knows it. Listen to me. I am the absolute expert, right? Turns out to be it was buried there. But you had people put their foot down and declare, God damn it, it was not a thing, and they knew, just ask them. So I have seen sales quotes. In terms of people saying it was this much. I've never seen an actual piece of paper, so I'm going to say I don't know. I could repeat a lot of rumors. I've not seen an actual sheet of paper with the price, so I don't know.
What's the range on the rumors?
1,000 to 4,000.
Right.
And is that corrected for today's dollars, or is that who knows? So again, don't know. Until I see a receipt, which I don't know if anybody's ever posted, I don't know what to believe. As far as who buys it, though, you got to look at it like this. All right, so this would have been a game coming out of Nutting. It would not have been at auction. It would have been secondhand. So any of your second tier operators, your mom and pop fun places, they're out of the link. So it would be either arcades or chains that would be buying this thing. So an owner operator of an arcade would have personally selected to buy it. Now, let's say he had a fixed location, like he owned an arcade. He would have put this video game in the arcade, right? Let's say he owned a route. So he had, let's say he had a deal with 25 pizza parlors in the metropolitan Chicago area, right? And he put games in their pizza parlors. So he could choose to put this game in there. Absolutely. So but it would have come through an arcade operator owner. That would have been the purchase mechanism.
Right. Not something I'd ever thought about until just then. So we lost Marco of Marco's Specialties this month, and we also lost someone tangentially related to video games, and that is John Madden. I wonder if we'll see an end to the Madden series, if someone else is out there in the commentary player realm who will be, replace him, or whether they'll keep going with the Madden name. I don't know, but we lost John Madden this last month. A name we've all heard of related to games. I don't know how many of us know him from his previous life.
But that's like saying name related to games like, Shaq Fu or
yeah.
FIFA.
Yeah.
I think he already had a deal in place to cover this eventuality, because it would have been on the cards coming up, and it would be like Ubisoft with Tom Clancy, where they just own the name Tom Clancy's so they don't have to do anything through the Tom Clancy estate or anything to put stuff out or have it related to any of his work, any of that stuff. It's just, hey, we own this as a brand now. So I guess they probably already own, Madden as a word they can attach to their football game.
Yeah.
I don't know how much they.
You'd think it would have a limited time on it, though, wouldn't you? You wouldn't think it'd be perpetual.
I don't know. Wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. So there's one here again from Lazy Dave Gyrick, and it is the story of Bully 2. Not a game I've played. I'm sure we've discussed Bully in a top 10. Was it the controversial games, perhaps? But Bully 2, I know nothing about, but I can find out everything I don't know by clicking on this link in the show notes. So thank you, Lazy Dave, for that. And then another Dave sent in this one. Maybe he wants a little to talk about it a little, but it is GoldenEye 007 getting a digital release, but not on a Nintendo console.
Yeah, well, it's still a bit up in the air. There may be some sort of deal with bringing it to the Switch, perhaps, but there was the Xbox 360 remake that got leaked out. When was that? It was midway through last year, I think, or fuck knows. The last 2 years are all the same thing anyway. And so a bunch of achievements ended up getting sort of mined off the achievement sites, like conglomeration sites, which kind of indicates that it may well be coming for an official release. I guess they can put out that 360 version on the Xbox One and Xbox Series using their backwards compatible layer and don't have to do any work to it. But whether they might think about because they've just brought out Banjo-Kazooie for the Switch Online N64 emulation. So I guess people are now sort of wondering as well, does this mean that we maybe will get the N64 version on Switch Online or not? So who knows? Could happen. Might be there. Does anyone want it particularly? I think there's a lot of nostalgia for it. A lot of that's around multiplayer, which maybe doesn't hold up these days. It's certainly hard to get 4 people sat around your living room for over the last few years.
There's probably better games to play multiplayer. Make something new. So we got one here again from Dave Gyrick. Can we call him Lazy Dave when he submits so much? I don't know. But it was a YouTube video, and it's every Mario game ranked from worst to best. And I saw this come in. I clicked on it. I thought, I've got, best part of an hour spare. I'll maybe sit through this. The fucking thing's 2.5 hours long. So I'm not sitting through this. I clicked on the first one and then on the last one. Much to Dave's annoyance, it's a Super Mario Galaxy game. Which one you'll have to watch for 2.5 hours to find out.
They're both terrible.
No.
So what was funny for me is I clicked on that, and it actually launched a completely different video. YouTube gets funny results. So Google is banned from my network. And I've got, the Firewall, which is running the ad block and the VPN and all that. So sometimes, like, if I do attempt to watch a YouTube video, sometimes it plays. Sometimes it just plays the ad only, and then goes from one ad to another ad. Like basically saying, "Oh, we're not getting any demographics data or mining your shit. Fuck you, watch ads." And so it actually came up with every handheld console ranked from worst to best.
That might be a better video. I don't know. I can't vouch for this one. And he doesn't express an opinion.
I'm not watching it.
He doesn't express an opinion, so I'm not sitting through 2.5 hours to find out.
It's even like it goes into depth of like it's not just Mario games. It's like games with Mario in it, like Wrecking Crew and. I didn't see it, but I think maybe the old tennis games where he's just a referee. So you could kind of argue about how much of it's actually a Mario game or not, or just Mario making an appearance. But
yeah, you could argue about that, or you could click on another one and read that instead, which is what I've just done. And it's indie retro news. Dizzy the Adventurer, an unreleased Sega Mega Drive Dizzy game as a remake for the PC, gets a free release. I did download it. I did install it. I did play it a little bit. But I have played the game before, so I'm not going to complete it again. But there you go. It's free. It's a PC game for free. What could be wrong with that?
It even met your expectations.
Hey, what a terrible yoke that is. And speaking of terrible yokes, quick question. Do military barbers shave their privates? It's that time again. Have you got the post-Christmas blues? Are you looking to cheer yourself up in the new year? Then grab the gift that keeps on trimming. Manscaped, the leaders in below-the-waist grooming, have got you covered, or should I say, uncovered. Join the over 2 million men around the world who trust Manscaped to keep their gentleman gardens in order. Go to manscaped.com and use the code RGRoundup for 20% off plus free shipping. Check out the Performance Package 4.0, which contains the Lawnmower 4.0, the landmark trimmer with its skin-safe technology. Yes, skin-safe technology, and it's even waterproof so you can use it in the shower. The Manscaped Performance Package 4.0 also includes the Crop Preserver and the Crop Reviver, an anti-chafing ball deodorant, moisturizer, and toner. Not only that, but you also get a pair of Manscaped anti-chafing boxers, which Random has vouched for in the past. And if that's not enough for you, you'll also get the Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, again waterproof and with a 9,000 RPM motor. Trim that nose hair with its 360-degree rotary dual blade system. Even Random can use their products and the cologne with a light yet masculine fragrance because it's not only hypoallergenic, it's friggin' vegan. Yeah, vegan.
Not a fucking strip of bacon to be found in any of their products.
No bacon in the refined cologne, I can guarantee it. It's
maybe less of the masculine fragrance, though.
Yeah, bacon would make it more masculine. Maybe they could do a masculine bacon version. I'd buy that. It's cruelty-free, it's dye-free, and more importantly to all of us, I know, it's paraben-free. I hate those parabens. So, all our listeners love technology, and get a load of this. It charges wirelessly. Yeah, the trimmer charges wirelessly. So, help yourself to reduce the risk of ingrown hairs and grooming accidents by checking out the Manscaped Performance Package 4.0. Remember, it comes with 20% off plus free shipping with the code, here it is, RGRoundup at manscaped.com. Do it today.
I personally was unaware of the paraben crisis.
Oh, it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing, dude.
I mean, are you going to hike back up Machu Picchu for that?
I actually identify as paraben free, so I'm okay.
I used to be a paraben peddler, but, you know, my conscience caught up with me.
Yeah, no, there's no call for it these days. Oh, okay. Random Dave has one there. Arcade 1-Up. Doing what Arcade 1-Up doesn't do.
So they're bringing out a new line. And as I've said here, they're starting with Killer Instinct and Micah's Killer Ringstink. But this is a new line from Arcade 1-Up. We all know as the company that make 2/3 sort of sized arcade cabinets that we thought may become Walmart specials, but have become pretty successful as a line. And they sort of had hop-up booster blocks that you could put them on to sort of make them taller, but not actually sort of bigger. But now they're going to make Pro Edition, what they're going to call the Pro Series, with full-size replica cabinets, starting with Killer Instinct. With thanks to the people at Microsoft that have allowed them to do this. What else we'll see, I don't know. But yeah, could be interesting getting a bunch of full-size stuff.
Yeah,
The
God, I
future.
wonder where they're going to land on the price point and distribution. Because, see, their other stuff is done as flat pack, right?
Mm.
So they can ship a lot of them in a relatively small amount of space, right? So, these have a 19-inch LCD. Probably should use the 22 to get the full 19 effect. Anyway, let's see here. Suzo Hap. All right, so a lot of this is the added Wi-Fi, so they have online multiplayer. Interesting. Full height cabinet. Again, the monitor I think is a bit undersized. They're gonna light the marquee. Okay, that's standard. Suzo Hap joysticks and buttons. Okay, Suzo and Hap have been around forever. They make arcade controls, so that's pretty authentic. Upgraded speakers and speaker grills. It's
all about the speaker grills.
Whatever. Yeah. Clear deck protector. Okay. One of the problems with their early stuff is the art would wear out pretty quick. So just make an industry standard one. Faux metal T-molding. Okay. Why not just say plastic T-molding?
Because it's shiny silver.
Faux arcade 1-up badge. Wouldn't you just want to say arcade 1-up badge and skip the faux? Look, I don't want to dislike these guys. I have given them great credit for, going ahead. But some of the things, I know this isn't targeted towards me, a serious collector, but has anybody ever advertised, a faux badge as being a primary top 10 feature of the unit? I don't know, man. But maybe their messaging and their advertising's working. I'm befuddled as to why, but I know no shit. I do wish them success because they seem to be doing okay. One other one.
Just before you go off that one, I do hope they do okay. I think the success on this is going to be around price point because, the smaller ones were aimed at families with kids. At, pretty much an impulse purchase for a lot of people, and they filled a need. And maybe some of those people want a bigger fix and will pay a bit more. But like you said, they're not aimed at the arcade collector because you'll go out to an auction and buy a real machine. But if they price it just beyond the impulse purchase, I think they're really going to struggle.
Yeah, and how do you hold the cost down? I mean, all T-molding is plastic or metallic, in the sense of chrome T-molding. It's still plastic. Just use T-molding.
Yeah.
Who cares? I mean, who the fuck? I grew up in arcades. I didn't know what the fuck T-molding was till I owned my second machine. And I'm like, oh, this edge stuff. So I went to I didn't know what it was called. You don't know. So I went to cabinetry shops. And I'm like, oh, that stuff used to be used in the 70s on table edges for diners, but I haven't seen that in years. That's not even made anymore. And I thought it was kind of at a dead end until I found, oh geez, tmolding.com has it.
Yeah.
That's what it's called. Then you're like, okay. But and then I've had people obviously they get their first game and they ask me, I'm like, oh, okay, so here's what you want to do. And it's all still out there, it's all still available, but yeah, kind of weird.
Yeah. We've got someone needy in the chat. They're requesting a shout-out. But I suppose it is RF Warrior, so I suppose we could give RF Warrior a shout-out. So, hello.
If you send some music, we'll give him loads of shout-outs.
Yeah.
I was awfully confused. I asked for a shout-out, and I got it. I don't know what to make of that.
Yeah. Send us some news items, and you'll get lots of mentions. That's kind of how it works. Stop being so needy.
Dave Rick does.
Guy Dave Rick.
But did we see the one that he sent in about the Fallout TV series?
I saw it. I have limited knowledge of the series and the games, so I will leave it to those who don't. So
the series and the games within it. The games are fucking fantastic, I think. 76 notwithstanding. But Fallout 4, one of the best video games I've ever played in all of my years of playing across every generation. Love Fallout Vegas, love them all, right? So they're making a video game series, right? And I'm sorry, a TV series based on the video game, right? I just gotta wait till it gets here. I honestly, I took a look at this article, and it's more or less like, oh, all these different Hollywood names have joined, and this guy's doing this. It doesn't tell you really anything. Like, one of the guys directing it was involved with Westworld. Okay, loved Westworld. Think it's brilliant, right? I don't know what's going to come of it. I mean, either they just make the series in fidelity to the video game, and they can do some really neat, amazing things with it, or they're going to totally step on their dicks, and it's going to have nothing to do with the video game series, and it's going to be every current improved messaging things shoved in. It's going to be crap. I hope it's not crap. I want it to be great. But honestly, I think on this one, I'm just going to have to just sit there until it comes out and not work myself up about it.
Yeah, it's can be a wait and see what they do. Is it going to sort of Walking Dead it but with power armor and, take this guy out of the vault, but then it's all about all the other, as much about the other people that he meets along the way, or are they going to give it a more of a solo feel, like you've had, the Mandalorian and stuff was a bit more sort of focused on,
So Dave, you dropped a great point there,
solo
man.
person's travels.
Okay, so I want to back up just a tad, because you dropped a great point there. I don't want us to run past. You're talking about, is it just going to be this guy running around in power armor or whatever, right? Well, we know they have the special effects tech to do that and do it well. If you look at, like, 10 years ago, Falling Skies, you look at the stuff today, Snowpiercer, which just resumed, they have the tech to do it right. It could be done right. And not on, it used to be, well, it's a TV show budget, not a movie budget. So, like, you look at the, Terminator special effects and Sarah Connor Chronicles, they're fucking miserable compared to what the movie had, because they had a TV budget, not movie budget. Well, that said, the TV budget now does some amazing things. I mean, you look at even stuff like Squid Game made, nowhere near what you would call the Hollywood budget. Well, they did some amazing storytelling. I think they can do this right. I think they can pull off all the tech. I think they could have convincing power armor. I think they could have, wonderful, storylines along the game. There's unlimited areas to explore. There's unlimited, other parties and factions to bring into it. Where like he could show up, like you were making a comparison there to Mandalorian. Yeah, so he shows up at some fucking place, and there's this group of settlers that are being harassed by these mutants, and he goes up against the mutants. I mean, can you imagine how bad that would have looked like in the 70s or 80s? It would have been like rubber suits and, Oh,
yeah. I mean, just think of like Doctor Who with, some of the what is it, the Silurians, always one that sticks out with me. They're sort of just people in rubber suits flopping around. But now, all the mutants and the ghouls and stuff would look pretty awesome. And the environments as well, that doing that apocalyptic wasteland, the Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett, it's all done in Unreal Engine, and sort of built so they can build it and iterate on it in sort of real time and then rendered out offline, really in a really performant way. So you can build, entire sets in, in the digital world without it being the same burden that it would have been to do that kind of thing, which you'd have to, you'd do for films, but you wouldn't try and do it for a serialized TV thing. But now, you can practically do it in real time. So yeah, it's plenty that they could do right with it. It just remains to see whether they do, I suppose.
Yeah. Again, I can't get all. It's something I've wanted to see tremendously, but I have so little faith that they actually execute something faithful to what the fans would want to see, that I'll just have to freaking see it for it to believe it. So,
yeah. Another one from random here. My Workspace. run the Amiga Workbench on Windows. And there is a link with some information there on how you can run Amiga Workbench on Windows if you want to do it that way. My personal preference, and the one I use, is by going to Cloanto and downloading Amiga Forever. That package is fantastic. I've got C64 Forever and Amiga Forever. Not only do they do great emulation, but also you can run full screen Amiga operating systems. So I would do it that way personally, but if you don't want to pay for Cloanto products, and really you should, there is an alternative.
I don't even remember sending that in.
You did.
It's funny because there's such great ways to use the Amiga now. Sort of the actual Amiga is my go-to, but the loads that have come out to run on the Pi are just amazing, and you can just reproduce pretty much any Amiga you care to with a couple button clicks. But the one thing I am super stoked for is the new Amiga that the guys are coming, the ones that made the C64.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing an Amiga. Unfortunately, it looks like they're doing the Amiga Mini first, which will be the same board. It just won't have a useful keyboard, and it's a novelty. I'm waiting on. I mean, I bought the C64 Mini, but the C64 was such a once in a decade runaway hit, amazing product that you still can't buy. I don't even want to bother with the Mini. I want to go straight to the full-size one. But if it looks like they're releasing the Mini first, I'll buy the Mini and then send them a note that I bought the Mini just so they'd make the full-size to support the product. I think that stands to be as revolutionary a product as the C64 has been. They did such a beautiful job that, I mean, the C64 is now my C64. I've got C64s, and they're, one's over there with the TV, one of them's, up there on the shelf. The one I actually use every day to play games on and have as a Commodore 64 is the C64. Why? It's got HDMI out. It goes straight into that monitor, and it looks beautiful, and it works. So I honestly, man, I think that this new Amiga is going to be the way to do Amiga. I think it's going to be wonderful in its execution. So just can't wait to see it. And I think it'll be one of those things where, of course, they're shipping to Europe for some reason first, even though the Commodore had, was certainly not born there, and whatever, fine. All right, so you're going to ship it over there first. So now I got to get my overseas version backdoored into the country, and then they'll announce the full size. I'll do a pre-order on Amazon. 6 months later, that will silently disappear from my purchases, and then I'll be running around like a fucking idiot trying to find one again. So hopefully that's not the experience, but I think it's going to be.
It could well be. And random.
Once I get my hands on one, I bet I won't be disappointed.
No. I'm hearing good things about the Pi 400. That was the keyboard version of the Pi. You can put, your OS on the SD card, put it in there. You've already got your keyboard right there. I've read about a lot of people doing Amigas and C64s via that, just adding a mouse for the Amiga. But I'm hearing good things about that. But yeah, these products, as Scott said, show great promise. Random. I hope that is a work meeting going on behind you and not a party, because that would be wrong.
It's a little sing song.
So in
song we're having
in YouTube chat there, RF Warrior says, what did he say? Please talk about the Amico news. The news is
Tallarico Chameleon.
the Amico
let's
Chameleon.
talk about the Tallarico Chameleon.
Yeah. The news is I don't think there's any news. I did reach out to Tommy, asking him to come on the show and discuss it, and so far tumbleweed. So that's the Amico news.
I just don't know what the fuck to say. I stand by my assessment, of how I think all this came out. I think he was slow rolling to death a bit. The prices soared, and he thought he'd be okay when the prices dropped again. That hasn't happened. There's still availability issues. So unless he wants to overpay and make no money per unit, he's in a terrible fix. But, you know, that's, I think when you overpromise, that's a danger. But then the stuff he's doing, the stuff that I would love to have him on to ask him to defend, is where he starts going to war with people and running his mouth. Oh, and once again, Frank Safadi or whatever has inserted himself into the narrative as somehow the linchpin of this story too. I couldn't believe it when I saw this. Like, you know, there's a whole online back and forth spat about Tommy's online back and forth spats, and then of course somebody starts accusing him of being, oh, he's a Trump supporter. It's like, the fuck what? That's your big, and then it just gets sillier and sillier. And these people went off into this whole giant thing about, all these online fights that Tommy's engaged in and, like all the arguments, whatever, and the deletions. And to their credit, they actually did give a lot of concrete examples where he's gone in and deleted the fucking threads that didn't go his way and tried to get the shit censored out of things. I'd love to hear him defend that. How about, you just take a page from history and just go, all right, look, I had a great idea. This fucking thing hit. The shortages happened. I'm in a hell of a fix, guys. I can either refund the money or I can hold off until prices settle down and we can make this thing again. But I can't afford to write a check for this much money just to deliver something because the world changed. I'm sorry. I could not but understand that. And honestly, I would keep my money in. I've got a fucking Founders Edition on order. I would keep my money in. But unfortunately, the way it's been handled, which is just shameful, I think the only thing that's going to come out of this is noise and then a very underwhelming console with almost no software support, and it's going to disappear. It's going to be a shelf novelty, and that's a damn shame.
Yeah. I mean, I've nothing to add. I've lost track of where we've discussed it on news, where we've discussed it, outside of a top 10 at the end before we disconnect. I don't know. It's fucked. Here's my summation. It's fucked. Something else that's fucked is E3 because it's online again. Wow, that'll be something I'll look forward to.
It might actually not be, funnily enough. It's still not entirely clear whether they're actually bothering to do anything. I think they were just sort of confirming.
So it's either online or cancelled.
Yeah,
wow.
Because everyone else kind of has learned over the last 3 years, 4 years maybe, that Nintendo we'll do a Nintendo Direct. It doesn't need to be as part of an E3 presentation, and obviously. What's his name? Fucking
Keith Apicary.
Jeff Keighley. He does the Summer Game Fest.
I wasn't going to say him.
So that kind of might just essentially publishers might just smaller publishers or ones that don't want to do a full thing for themselves might do something there. But then with Microsoft owning half the industry now as well, what's going to happen there? Because you've lost Bethesda as a separate event potentially, so we're sort of, it doesn't make any sense.
I think it's about all for the damn course, because what are we going to end up with? We're going to end up with 2022 with E3 not really being a thing. We're now consolidated to 2 major studios, if even that anymore, and there's no games. Like, where the hell are the games? Like, what can I go buy for the PS5? I just think we're going to end up in a somehow utterly self-inflicted, no games, no real gaming momentum, yet still it's going to be one of the largest markets that's completely being fucked up.
Yeah.
So what's the... Well, I mean, like, I see so many people that have left the industry, people that can't make money in the industry, can't have stable lives. We all know the problems. Where does this go? I mean, where's the off-ramp? At some point, is Microsoft going to recognize this and go, you know what? Can't keep going this way. We're going to make the gaming industry healthy again. I want 6 groups working on 8 titles right now? Or are they just going to take over, consolidate, worry about getting all the people in the HR system, worried about consolidating everything on the Microsoft servers and managing rights, and no focus on game production? That's going to be my guess. Prove me wrong.
Yeah, well, we don't know yet. But obviously Activision, I mean, well, it's coming up in the news, but I mean, it's a good time to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a studio a publisher, sorry, that, you know, they've basically all of the Activision studios. I mean, they went and let one of them do the Tony Hawk remake recently. Went down really well. Everyone liked it. Critics liked it. Customers liked it. People wanted them to do the rest of it. So what do? They put the teams, booted them back over onto Blizzard, joining a Blizzard team. Everyone else, they just pull in and just make Call of Duty. You know, they've got multiples of studios all just make Call of Duty now. That's you know, they don't do anything with anything they have. Whereas sort of Phil Spencer's been saying, you know, he wants to see some of the old Activision games that he grew up with return. I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, if they'd have left Activision to itself, then it would have just carried on as it was. But there's a chance, maybe slim, but there's at least a bit of a chance where Microsoft are going to be able to say, all right, we want to open up, make some smaller budget things, let you do some passion projects or whatever, pitch us some ideas with all the old IPs. Hell, fuck it. You know, if you want to make something with one of the other company's IPs that we also now own, go for it. You know, let's everyone just, you know, come up with some cool shit, and we'll see what's worth taking a punt on.
I'm not encouraged, because the reason for that is so I see all the emails that come into news. I see them live. They go into my regular email account in a folder. And literally, Charlie sent this one in. Microsoft buys Activision/Blizzard for nearly $70 billion. The very next email was from me. Microsoft reviews sexual harassment and gender discrimination policies because of all the shit that's been going on at Activision. So they're focused on that right now. They're not making games anytime soon.
Well, no. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of shit to sort out there. And there's you know, the unionization in Raven QA and all sorts of stuff that's going on. There's a lot of shit to get sorted out with the Activision Blizzard group in general. But you know, I think it's possibly a reason. It should hopefully be a reasonable home for them. But yeah, because that Microsoft thing was, you know, they publicly said back in October, I think it was, when there was like internal that weren't supposed to be public emails that were made public, which were blatantly supposed to be made public, but in a way that they didn't have to come out in public and say these things, if you're following me. Both Sony and Microsoft did it, where they were saying, you know, we are reviewing our relationships with Activision, blah, blah, blah. And then a bit later, Phil Spencer had like publicly said himself, like, oh, we're like actively investigating Activision or something and their current practices, and it's clearly like, yeah, we're investigating them because their stock prices is going to plunge, or we can snap them up for a bit cheaper than we probably would have done had this not all gone down. But yeah, it's a mess. Activision's a fucking mess. Blizzard's a fucking mess. But hopefully this is a way of, you know, 3 years time, something actually coming from it, rather than just stagnation of World of Warcraft going nowhere, Overwatch going nowhere, and just Call of Duty getting churned out all the time. So we'll see. I'll give.
Yeah, but I guess from their point of view is, if they're selling mountains of Calls of Duty, why worry with Fallout 5? Fallout 5 takes effort. Call of Duty, you just drop on another fucking skin, you know.
Well, I mean, obviously, yeah, that's what it's all come down to. It's all just business. They're all, you know, they've got to answer to shareholders. If they have a way that makes money, then that's what they're going to do. They're not going to make interesting, fun games to satiate, you know, 500,000, 1 million people who want to see cool, interesting stuff made with the medium. And that's where we've got to, and that's, you have to dig into the indie developers for a lot of that. And the in between, you had the sort of the B tier game, especially from Japan. Really interesting B tier games just do not exist pretty much anymore. And it's a big shame because I liked a lot of it, even though a lot of it was bad. It was bad in interesting ways, and that's what my favorite stuff is.
That's another potential show title too. Bad in interesting ways.
Something else that's bad in interesting ways came in from Gareth Hamer, who says, Happy New Year, get you guys. Bit slow on the news as house hunting, so best of luck with that. And he sent us a YouTube video called Just Demake It, and it is 10 best demakes of modern games. And I skipped through this. I didn't watch it all, but I skipped through. The one that stuck out to me was a demake of Halo. But rather than use one of our favourites, Halo 2600, by the aforementioned Ed Freeze, they've chosen a platformer. I didn't know there was such a thing. But interesting video. Not some of the biggest games you'll have ever heard of, but I agree. Demake it. Demake it. Let's go back. Let's go back to when games were great.
Yeah. To the Dave sends in some news, which was about another video game publisher that doesn't make any games, doesn't do anything interesting with their licenses. Oh, except that they've Konami, of course, did make some NFTs out of some Castlevania artwork and short video clips, which unfortunately did. I don't know whether it was successful really or not. They all sold. I think they were auctioned at OpenSea. But yeah, I'm completely fucking waste of time, waste of space things. So
yeah. Those of us who actually want to play games are not interested in your goddamn serial number JPEG photo of something from a game you once made.
No.
Exactly.
No.
Make a fucking new decent Castlevania.
Yeah, or something. Another one from Gareth Hamer, in between house hunting. If your Game Boy needs more room. And this is an interesting video, and it's one of those videos of people with too much time on their hands. So someone's taken an old Tiger LCD game, and they've taken the guts out of a Game Boy Advance and fitted them in the Tiger game case. So why would you? I don't know. But can you? Yeah, of course you can.
Well, you can fit a SNES and a Jag. Well, the sky's the limit.
You can. You can fit a pie in an Amico. Dear me. So, what's this? I don't remember this one coming in. This one must have slipped by from Andrew Costin. A new retro joystick. Clicky kinky, he says. And he sent it from his iPhone. It is Unithor, a brand new joystick for retro computers. It kind of reminds me sort of the QuickShot 2 with the fire button on the base and the trigger, but it's also got one on the back as well, where your thumb could sort of sit. And it's showing USB and 9-pin connectors. I don't recall this one coming into my email box, but obviously it did do. So it looks interesting. So thank you, Andrew, for sending that.
Yeah, it looks pretty cool, actually.
It does. It does.
So, I got one here that's kind of interesting. I wonder about the heritage of this thing. It says it's from Andrew Costin. It says it's a new retro gaming technology magazine. And it's called the Pixel Addict magazine. Now, that kind of makes some interesting sense because there was a Robotech fanzine that was published in the 80s. And I could never find it back then. Since then, I found it. And it was called Protoculture Addicts, right? And I wonder if Pixel Addict is kind of inspired or not at that. But they go into the A-Core computer, the Sega Dreamcast, history of Teletext, Command and Conquer. It looks like they cover games and technologies. I don't know anything about, pagination and layouts, and I'm sure if Sparkle is here, he could look at this and go, dude, this is total high school crap. Or, oh, this is a good job. I can't tell the difference. I don't care. It looks like it's an interesting mix of compelling topics, so I'm willing to give them a try.
Yeah, some of the things in the layout, and again, I'm no expert, but stuff I find difficult to read. You can kind of go through and click on a few pages. They've got like a blue background page with a Sega watermark on it and white text over it, and stuff like that, where it kind of washes out over the watermark is pretty hard to read. I would skip that page. I can't read that. Literally cannot see it, but the rest of it, as far as I'm concerned, looks pretty interesting. What was the price on it then? I've just closed it. It is... I did have the price on screen.
£4.50.
£4.50 for issue 1. I suspect they're all the same price, but you never know.
Wow. Speaking of things you never know about, Charlie, David Gyrich, and I want to say somebody else, sent in a link to different articles on the same topic that Snesticle is real, and it exists. So Nesticle was a amazing working emulator. At the time that I was running it, this was mid-90s, I was running, I think at the time, like a K6-2. I'd just gone from the Pentium series over to the K6 series and all. And we had this computer at work, and I want to say it was like a Pentium 60. Not ancient, just a few years old. It's funny to think of it that way, but it was the 46s had largely died in terms of commercial use, and we had gone into the Pentium era, and then now into the Pentium 2 era was really coming on strong. And I remember Snesticle ran on this box. Now this box had nothing special. It was not a high power machine. It had a who cares graphics card. Like I said, Pentium 60, CPU, not a lot of RAM, and it ran Nesticle perfectly. And the interface for Nesticle was great, but what Nesticle did most of all is you could load up a game on a modest PC, and you could play as if you had NES in your hands. I never really experienced any quirks or bad interactions. I always liked playing at the time that people were first starting to really edit the ROMs. And you would get like one of the favorite ones I ever played was like UPS versus FedEx. Like, so they would take like a 2-player game like Mario Brothers, and they had like a FedEx van and a UPS van, and they were competing for deliveries or whatever. The wheelchair Mario, well, it was literally a Mario, except they put him in a wheelchair, so he's like wheeling instead of walking. And it was just all these little edits, and they were fun and they were funny. Nesticle eventually got supplanted by other things. And, there's no emulation package that we were using 20 years ago that we're still using today for the most part. So, it had its time, and the time passed, and we kind of forgot about it, right? Well, here they have this article that Snesticle, which was rumored to exist, actually did. So, the fabled SNES emulator known as Snesticle, for which much of the last 2 decades was considered to be nothing more than a rumor, has finally been unearthed and excavated by a Swedish programmer using, of all things, a national security agency designed open source tool. Snesticle, the follow-up to Iser Addis's legendary Nesticle emulator, a follow-up the ex-EA employee long denied even existed, was found buried in the code for a GameCube version of 2005's Final Fight Night Round 2, where it was being used to enable gamers to unlock a playable version of Super Punch-Out. Okay, as reported in Vice, in an article that also links to a fascinating story of the original Nesticle, Swedish programmer Jonas Holmberg spent months working tirelessly using Ghidra, an NSA open source tool that was also involved in Super Mario 64, releasing on PC and PS2 back in 2020, to carefully liberate the legendary emulator, reverse engineering code in order to isolate and extract it. So I guess the Snesticle was finished, and they used it in the game, and so that you could play the Punch-Out in it. And wow, what a piece of history! Of course, there's other things now and other ways to emulate it, so it's not like it matters. But it's a nice bit of backstory.
Yeah, I remember using Nesticle and Genesist as well.
Yeah.
With their sort of dripping blood menu effects and everything.
Oh, I just thought that was cool. The whole thing was cool, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. Some of the emulators had great names.
So,
Come
mic
on,
someone in. Oh.
Snapping your seatbelts again. UK Mike, break out the ways and bring up our destination again. Because we're about to take the exit ramp back off the highway into the Tallarico Chameleon territory.
Oh, no. Oh.
The drama continues. Ken Carlson sent this back in. One of the things that we had mentioned was the ARS Technica article, in which they basically took apart the Amico and said, look, this is what's going on, man, and it ain't healthy. So Amico has responded. Apparently, in response to a rather grim January 6th ARS Technica article, Intellivision felt it necessary to post a bullet point statement of facts. Of very high interest is the statement is signed Phil Adam. Oh, I'm sorry, I lost my place. Let me read this again. They posted a 6-point bullet point statement of facts on January 14th. Of very high interest is the statement is signed by Phil Adam. Mike, how many times does the name Phil Adam appear in Smoke and Mirrors?
Quite a lot where promotion and opening doors is concerned.
So, these statements signed Phil Adam and John Alvarado, senior management, and Tommy Tallarico, who has been the public face of Intellivision for good or worse at times these past few years, is not listened or mentioned. So Tommy Tallarico is not mentioned nor listed, but Phil Adam and John Alvarado is. Now, during the entire Coleco Chameleon debacle, I don't remember anything pointing to Phil Adam doing anything wrong. In fact, I think he like Weeda quietly ghosted the moment it turned out to be a fucking scam, right?
Yeah.
So I find his name on this fascinating. Okay, if it's gone by the time you're reading this, here's the 6 bullet points in short. 1, ARS Technica claimed $100 in parts per $250 console. And Intellivision took offense to this, claiming it's outdated information based on the past unauthorized access of their outdated confidential developer documents. And Intellivision claims those parts costs were just cheap test devices, but doesn't clarify how much is the correct amount invested in each console. The real chips are underneath the capture card. Now, I will say this. Whenever you look at things like a website will do, like iFixit, they'll do a teardown of, say, the iPhone 12, and they'll say, all right, it's about $480 in retail parts here. Okay. And then they sell it for $12. Well, there's manufacturing, distribution, the right to make a profit, as every company has, and whatever they determine it is, because anything in all of the world is only worth what 2 people agree it's worth. So Apple can roll out the new iPhone and say, look, here it is. You know you want it. And I can go, it's not worth that. And I can just choose not to play. So Intellivision, or whatever implementation of Intellivision this is, they have every right to, if it costs $100 in parts, and then another $80 to get the thing on the shelf, sorry, this cold's killing me. Even, I don't care what it costs in parts. That's, but the fact that they talk about the unauthorized access of their outdated confidential development documents, I am so tired of that being just a scapegoat. Like, you catch them. This is what you said. Well, that's unauthorized. Like when we, would drop bombs on the Chameleon, and they'd say, well, that came from unauthorized this. And my immediate thing is to go, unauthorized by who, you scamming motherfucker? And I got 10 times more mad, So mixed results on number one. Number two, they disagreed with ARS saying that their 2019 sizzle reel hadn't their 2019 sizzle reel hadn't had much more reveals since. Granted, there hasn't been much more, but they have had more videos of detailed gameplay since. Well, there's been a lot of questions about some of those videos. Some of those videos were like people just said, well, that's not from this, that's from that. And I don't remember the details, so I don't want to misquote it. And then it all disappeared the next day. That smacks of some Kennedy-esque Chameleon stuff. They disagree with ARS. The near final OS didn't appear until the end of 2021, and pointing to an August 2020 YouTube video of an earlier OS. Well, I've heard enough about this. The whole, we're done with the software. We just need to go to production, but the chip cost went up. Then all of a sudden they're hiring a software guy, and they're like, oh yeah, we're getting ready to start the software. Bob, I'm not supposed to remember what you said the day before. All right. Number 4, they disagreed that Shark and Missile Command were referred to as unfinished, claiming they're definitely finished, just unpublished with the console not launched. Technically impossible to confirm, deny, though. Whatever words, unless it's a blatant lie like we're courting Konami or Konami's courting us, and then you have the email saying, don't mention our name, we don't know you. 5, they disagreed with ARS's claim that the UI groups all games, purchases, unpurchased together, pointing to a YouTube video. That's not the case. So that's been one of the complaints, that it lists all the games, like basically the store, and then it lists the ones that you have purchased right next to the ones that you haven't. Apparently who would go forward with that? That's got to be fixed. And that's pre-production. Who cares? So I don't take any issue with that. Number 6, they disagreed with ARS's entire article describing the Amico as a retro console, more suited to 2018-ish, and comparing its various mini retro consoles. Apparently, Amico admits they overlap with the retro crowd, but does not seem to want it defined as a retro console. Okay, I'm fine with that too. They can say, look, it's not really a retro console, it's a new console that came out of this heritage. Great. Okay, that's a characterization. I don't think that's an issue. But why are Phil, Adam, and John doing these? How about you know what would impress me? The part that irritates me is none of this impresses me at all, and none of this delivers a console with a compelling games library. All of this is anything but the delivery of a console with a compelling games library. How about you do that? Because anything else is just hot air coming out of your ass. And I'm tired of hearing it. Just fucking produce the goddamn console.
Do you know what? That's my overriding experience. You summed it up. I'm tired. I'm just tired of it. Tired. And it in YouTube, who was it? Matt said, what did he say? I'm just watching with the sound down. I always save this for the podcast while washing up. And I said, me too. I'm not even listening. I'm experienced enough to speak at the right moments. It's just, this is ridiculous. It's beyond pantomime. It's just, fuck. I mean, really. Oh, it's mental. It just is mental. Make a console or don't make a console.
What if you spent your time doing just that? What if you made a fucking console and shut your pie hole?
Yeah, really.
You know why I'm calling it the Tallarico Chameleon? It has nothing to do with what the console was originally promised to do. It's got nothing to do with the fact that Tommy put his own money into it and tried to take a brand forward. It's got nothing to do. There are a lot of things about up until about 2 years ago that I fundamentally respected about this. And I wish them success. And I was an early backer. I mean, I put my money down and got a Founders Day the moment that it was possible. And I actually got like a text a few minutes later. Hey, saw your name come through on the thing. And I was like, fuck yeah, man. And, you know, but I have to say, just from the way that Tommy blew us off and treated us like he didn't know us, up to what he's doing now, he's turning this into the Talarico Chameleon. If he had shut his pie hole and made the damn thing and shipped it, that was his out. That was a success. Because whatever the fuck comes out of his mouth next, other than, and I guess I'm overgeneralizing and being harsh on Tommy, anybody that's producing a product but is not producing a product, that's just making hot air, anything that comes out of your mouth next, other than your ship date is this, and it actually is coming with a fucking tracking number, is not, I don't want to hear it. Don't want to hear it. You know what the maximum effective range of an excuse is? 0 meters.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. And I'm sick of the topic. If I'm honest, I'm sick of it. But I did reach out to him for an interview for this month, but nothing. So we wait and see. When it's out on the shelf, maybe he'll be available. I don't know. But something that won't be available for long is the Xbox One. It's officially dead, according to this article on Kotaku. And something else that's dead. So I mentioned at the top, Humble Bundle and the Snowdin bundle that Smoke and Mirrors is a part of. I mentioned they also do software bundles, and they're ending Linux and Mac support. And doing Windows-only bundles in future. I can understand them ending Mac support, I suppose, because of the switching processors, but I don't know. Linux, they could have
seems a bit
continued
odd
with
the
that.
Steam Deck coming out.
Yeah, they could have
Might be a
continued
revival.
that. Maybe they'll go back, I don't know. But for the time being anyway, it is ending.
This is one you sent in about Sega opening a new studio in Sapporo, which doesn't really tell us very much yet, sort of in any of the press for it. Don't really know what they're going to be tasked with, other than it kind of says a sort of mixture of software and hardware, but I think they're just covering all bases for Japanese corporate law there. We'll just say they'll do everything, and then doesn't matter what they do. But there is some more news from Sega, and that is that Toshihiro Nagoshi has officially now, it was a bit rumoured, but he's now officially moved away from Sega.
Damn it, Toshi!
Chinese company NetEase have taken him away from, well, he was basically working in the Ryuga Gotoku studio doing the Yakuza series for the last few years. But, he goes right back to Virtua Racing and those sort of days and Super Monkey Ball and all sorts of stuff. So he's going to have his own studio. And also today, Sega officially pulled out of the arcade business in Japan, and they've sold all of the properties over to someone else. I can't remember who they're called now.
Yeah, I had that. So I've got that in my list of articles here for the show notes page, but I mustn't have sent it in. I must have just copied and pasted it. So yeah, Sega have quit the Japanese arcade business after 50 years. They hinted at it in 2020, and obviously the last couple of years haven't been great for arcades, and they have sold out to a company called Genda, 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 and there was another brand, Geigo. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. It's Gigo. So they have sold out of the arcade business, which in Japan is a bit of a shock, maybe.
Well, don't know. It's probably been on the cards, hasn't it? I guess, unfortunately.
Well, they're not the only things to shut down in the last couple of years. There's one here who sent this in. It's an article on The Guardian. Terrible newspaper. Good article. I live in the 90s. Oh, it was sent in by random. And it's a guy who lives in the 90s. He's got a CD stack full of CDs. He's got a CRT TV with a SNES under it. He watches videos in his spare time, and he literally lives like it's still the 90s.
Yeah, it's an interesting article. Sounds like it was when he was dating. It wasn't the. It was a bit tricky, but finally got his partner round to the idea of it.
Which is ironic because she lives in the 70s. One here by random. I think a few others sent it in. I can see it from David Gyrick there. I saw it, but saw it had come in already, so didn't resubmit it. And it is Tomb Raider, the original Tomb Raider, running on a GBA. And there's video of it. It's been all over the place, this. I know Pat and Ian discussed it. There's lots of blog articles about it. And it looks like it runs really smoothly. There's not enough buttons for my liking on the GBA, but it does look like it runs really smoothly.
Now, unless I missed the gist of this, and this is what I was talking about earlier, I think this was just the display of it using that.
No.
This is the full
Modern
game.
Vintage Gamer did a good video on it that's worth watching. And they basically there's an open source implementation of the Tomb Raider engine.
Open Lara.
That people have made. Open Lara, and someone basically optimized the shit out of it, converted loads of calculations into lookup tables, and made it run natively on the GBA. It's pretty cool.
That's really cool. That's how they did it. Holy shit.
It is. So another Sony-related one. And who sent this in? Gareth Hamer. Again, in between house hunting. Sony renews trademark for the shuttered studio behind Lemmings and Wipeout. Now, these don't mean too much. It doesn't mean... we're talking about Psygnosis, obviously. It doesn't mean too much. It doesn't mean there's a glut of new games on the way. It may be that they're just protecting something. Maybe that they just don't want someone else to pick up that trademark or whatever. But they have renewed it, and people rejoiced.
Maybe. I have heard that there may be, like there was the Rare Replay collection on Xbox. It was around the Xbox One launch. I've heard there may be a Psygnosis collection on the cards, but I don't know how trustworthy a rumor that is at the moment.
Well, Lemmings, you need a mouse. Can you plug a mouse into a
PS5?
They
did. Well, but they did PSP versions of it.
They did, but the console version.
PS5 also has a touchpad. Remember, you can just use the fucking touchpad. Easy.
I suppose, yeah.
But
I have played console versions of Lemmings, and they're not great.
Well, no, but there's a bunch of stuff they've got, like G Police, the PS1 games, all sorts of stuff that's already like they've got the digital ones they used to sell on PSN. There's a bunch of stuff like that, basically, and I think they could sort of package together a load of stuff that they've already done. There wouldn't necessarily be new stuff put out there. So we'll see. Who knows? Who knows?
So one here, that I think remote play on your Game Boy. I think is that the one we mentioned earlier, the GTA. Once we get past the ad, I think it is. We lost someone else again. We've lost 3 this month's news. Added to the list of Marco, and who was the other? I can't remember now. But Lyman Sheets.
John Madden,
that was it. Lyman Sheets added to the list. He was like a pinball player, a world champion, always used to go to the pinball competitions, worked in the pinball industry. When we interviewed Steve Ritchie, was that episode 77? I think it was the AC/DC interview. He spoke very highly of Lyman, who did... Did he do the sound on that, I think? But he worked very closely with Lyman on that. Didn't have enough praise for him. So, yeah, we have lost Lyman Sheets, I'm afraid, this month.
It's funny. I was watching... how was I watching? Tilt, the Battle of Save Pinball. I was watching that just last night. And, they've mentioned in there briefly to him. An icon in the pinball industry. Super nice guy. fuck, we'd all live forever. And, the older we get, the more common it's going to be to see the guys that were, a generation or so ahead of us passing away. So sad, but, all you can do is thank them for their achievements. And Lyman was certainly an accomplished man. So
Definitely.
Oh, another person we could add to the death list, I guess, which is kind of tangentially related, was, of course, Meatloaf.
Meatloaf, yeah. And Barry Cryer. Americans have no idea who that is.
Let's not forget Neil Young's career.
So we have one here, silly little, well, I suppose it's not that silly. Police hunting Pokemon. So there was a couple of police officers who have been disciplined and I believe may have been dismissed. They received a call out to attend, I think it was a house break-in. They decided not to, so they went hunting Pokemon instead. So what a pair of fucking idiots. And that was in this country. And another one, David Gyrick. Not a video I'm going to watch. It's 44 minutes long, and I don't really care about the subject, but it's a new way to say dunk. The complete history of NBA Street, Volume 2. No doubt there's a Volume 1 out there as well, if you want to watch the complete series. But thank you for sending it anyway, David. Somebody will get something out of it. That somebody just wasn't me.
That was a comprehensive, I am not watching this, sir, and you can't make this.
Yeah, it pretty much was. It pretty much was.
Please, send in news entries in the future. It'll go better.
Yeah, send us lots. You never know, you may get a hit. Another swing and a miss, this time from Gareth Hamer. And he said, looks so real. And this is a long-lost Atari Jaguar game finally unearthed. And it is a racing game sort of similar to Pole Position and looks uncannily like Pole Position, despite it being decades later.
It looks a lot like what I did when I made a driving game
Race
in Excel
Invaders
using the no Race Invaders would be much better. But when I was coloring the cells to make like racing, and so I could make a level editor or a course editor in Excel and have it render out in Excel, which was just ridiculous.
The game is called Speedster 2, if you're interested. It's called Speedster 2 if you're not interested, to be honest. There's an interview sent in, again, by David Gyrick. It's an old interview. It's kind of Ocarina of Time era, and it's translated into English. It's been out there a long time in Japanese, but it's an interview with Miyamoto where he talks about kind of the sequence of Zelda games. You know, he's saying Ocarina's the first, and then Zelda 1 and 2, and then Link to the Past, and Link's Awakening is kind of out there somewhere. But so not really that too many revelations in it, but it's a fairly quick read and a worthy read, I guess, if you're a Miyamoto or Zelda fan.
I don't think there was a game called Speedster there wasn't a first one in the first place. They just tried to jump in at number 2 and weren't doing a very good job of it either.
They've created their own legacy, is what they've done.
Yeah.
And
that, good people, brings us to the end of our news items.
But not before we got silly and had a lot of fun.
No, we did have some fun. Let's see what Mr. Eastham's been up to in chat. Who's that? Matt Hopper, spoken like a true Biden. Let's go, Brandon. And that's enough to get us kicked off YouTube.
Then they're really not going to like my mass distribution of decals.
No.
They call me the Let's Go Bandit.
So, thank you for those who joined us live. James says, thanks, lads. Much appreciated. Well, thank you, James, for being there. Just knowing that you're there is enough for us. That's why we do it. That and the money, obviously.
Yeah.
But thank you for joining us live if you did.
Cash.
The what now?
And thank you for joining us not live and listening to the podcast if that's what you did. And stay tuned because we've got a hilarious end of show clip coming up. I don't know what it is yet, but it will be. And we will speak to you again very, very soon. So good night, everyone. Say good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. But not to the people that send in links that Mike doesn't like. He's very
Find a good documentary about Microprose Grand Prix or something.
Yeah, you better watch your ass.
Well, I've never seen a listener attack that savagely before.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah, everybody.